Dave Williams presents Conversations.buzz.
You and I have just spent several weeks and more than half an hour trying to get connected. I am so delighted to see you and hear you at the same.
Well, I'm. You know what they say. It's great to be seen. I used to think that that was rude, but now I understand that it means you're still here.
Exactly.
So yeah,
right.
this is nice, and it's good to see you again.
Mick, I've been trying to think about how long I've known you or known about you, at any rate, how many times I've seen you perform, which I have many times. But what I keep coming back to is the fact that you and I are both Sacramentans.
Yes, that's true.
And I don't know where it all begins. I know that I was born there and I lived there until I was almost 50. But I don't know, are you an original Sacramento icon?
Not sure what that entails, but I was born at Mercy Hospital in 1949, and in my early years, I was just a couple of blocks from the original state fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And Sacramento, apart from touring in the 90s, where I had a blues band, and our drummer was black. And I knew a lot of other blues bands who had gone to the South, which, of course, is where a lot of blues bands end up when they're on national tours. And the stories of the Klan were horrific. They'd bang on the side of the Greyhound bus or whatever and use a foul word to say, "You got any in there?" And I wasn't going to put our drummer, Jerry Banks, through that. So through a real miracle, my only out of the continent junket for a movie, because I was writing for the Sacramento Union and occasionally would go on junkets. This was to interview Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn on a movie called Bird on the Wire. And my wife and I went, and we had an extra week that we could pay for if we, didn't take the plane right away. And so we agreed to do that, got another hotel. People from the local blues society, meaning England, picked me up, took me to their home in Reading, and to see a promoter called Philip Guy Davis in Oxford. And it turned out that he really liked our music. And I went back to England especially, but I enjoyed Italy, Germany, Belgium, and it was great. And it was all because of that one trip. And we already had airplay overseas. And so we did one British album and one in Brussels for a label called Parsifal. And it was quite an exciting time. And if I'd had my choice, if somebody said, "Well, what do you want to do? You want to tour the States?" That's grueling. I know people who've done that, and I mean Buddy Guy and John Mayall and Elvin Bishop. I mean, I'm so old that I've met a lot of these people, and therefore,
I've played with a lot of those people.
Beg your pardon?
You played with a lot of those people.
Well, yeah. It was, it's like about 4 years ago or something, I thought, I've never done a damn thing. And then I started thinking about it. And you're a blue streak when you're in the groove and you're doing this stuff. I'm thinking, well, who have I played with? Mick Taylor of the Rolling Stones, Jimmy Smith at Carnegie Hall, the great jazz organ player. and Elvin Bishop and Nick Gravenites, and I mean, and on and on and on and on and on. I thought at the time it was like, well, I'm not getting anywhere. Look, you explain it to me. I think that because we're so focused on our careers that we never stop and say, wow,
Yeah.
that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
You just keep going. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you obviously interviewed a lot of celebrities on the radio, correct?
Yeah. Each step is a small one. That's
Yes.
that's the key to it. It's like you started out. Let me take you back there for a minute, because what I'm trying to get to is you got to playing with, Elvin Bishop and all these other people and being on stage everywhere in the world. It's like, what were the steps that took you there? Start at, first of all, why blues and how did that develop in your life in Sacramento of all places?
Well, I have to go back a little further, Father. Uh, it it all started with Johnny Hyde because he had that gear hour, which
Yeah,
was new music every week. He had somebody over in England who was sending him the latest hits.
that was
And
Johnny Hyde when he was doing radio at KXOA. Yeah,
yeah, I used to call you on the phone and request things.
yeah, right. That
That's how
K
far we
that
go
was it.
back.
KROY, right?
Yeah, well, I worked for Mark Ford, and he gave me a bunch of promos once, and I came in with only one out of this big stack, and I said, "This one's pretty good. It's called Let It All Hang Out." And I don't know if I started it or everybody else had heard it already, but I was only 12 when I started hanging around everywhere I could be, going to Croy. I just faintly remember riding my bicycle from West Sacramento over the bridge and going downtown. But that continued through K-ZAP. When K-ZAP first started, the guy who introduced me to Muddy Waters and took me to see Howlin' Wolf, Jeff Hewson, um, and had me come because I was working at Tower Records by that time. When you have this narrow view of what's important, you find that you intermingle with people. I used to refile records at Tower, because I didn't want them to kick me out, because I'm hanging around and I'm serving no useful purpose. So I put the records back in the aisles. And then one day, John Shire, the general manager, walked in and he says, "You're always sweeping up and refiling records and doing all these crappy jobs. Who are you?" I said, "Well, my name is Mick Martin." He said, "You want a job?" I said, "Yeah." So I ended up working at Tower. And the same thing, Whitey Davis used to run the Sound Factory, which was our Fillmore Auditorium, Avalon Ballroom. And I would go down there every day just to hang out. And I became the doorman. And then it slowly worked to where we opened for Pink Floyd and
Wait, wait,
Savoy
wait, wait,
Brown.
wait, wait. Sorry, you just jumped from being the doorman to working with Pink Floyd. You mean
Yes.
as a doorman for his show, or you mean playing on
No,
stage?
we opened up for them. We
Okay,
played the opening set.
and that's quite a jump, but okay, go ahead.
Well, that's the way it is. What I tell young people is you have to be in the room, and then all these things will happen. I know some young people who wanted to, my hat's bothering me. I know some young people who wanted to uh, be in the TV industry, and I was the film critic for Channel 40 at one
Yeah.
point, and then I started doing monthly specials on 40, and then later 31 and Channel 10. Anyway, I just said, you just be in the room. I'll tell you when we're shooting something. And if you can steady the camera, I was once told not to move, do not move. And this camera started tipping forward and it bounced along the cement floor. And that was expensive. But hey, I mean, they told me not to move. I wasn't. So I just noticed how, I don't want to say threadbare, but coincidental a lot of things were. My story is that, besides trying to be everywhere and being ignorant about being in the way, and I just got to know a lot of people, and my love of music involved me with Croy and K-ZAP, for example. There were other stations, Earth Radio in Woodland. I was just trying to be everywhere all at once. And then I went on the Bob Wilkins show. Remember Bob?
Absolutely.
Well, I was the guy that he called up and
what was
said,
the late night show that what did he call that late night show?
Preacher Features.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Channel
Yeah,
4.
I got a chance to thank Bob for what he did for me before he succumbed completely to Alzheimer's. He would call me on the phone, after I'd done the TV spots with him. And, because he did, I'd go on and talk about Sherlock Holmes or King Kong, that's the stuff I loved when I was a kid. And he'd call me up and say, have you gone down to the Sacramento Union yet? Are you the film critic? What are you waiting for? Get off your butt. Go down there. I didn't want to go. I was a shy kid. And finally, I went down there and they hired me. So, and then later, the guy from Columbia Pictures, Jack Scanlon, called me up while I was just starting at the paper. And he said, hey, I was talking to this guy at Channel 40, and they're starting the first 10 o'clock news in Sacramento. You ought to go down there because I think you're great on TV. And I'm going, no, I'm terrified on TV. And so I didn't call them. Then they called me. I may be stupid, but I'm not crazy. I mean, they asked me to come down. I was there. I figured the worst thing that could happen was that I would be terrible. I was terrible, and they hired me.
You've you've covered a lot of ground there in the last few minutes. I'm still curious about your music, how you started playing, what made you pick up
Okay.
the
Well,
yeah, go
you
ahead.
know, there's a saying that you don't choose the music you love, it chooses you.
Okay.
And I think that's very, very true because I heard Jimmy Smith's Walk on the Wild Side on KFRC. And like a lot of other people, for some reason, that magic moment, I actually asked my parents to pull over so I could listen to it. Bill Champlin of the Sons of Champlin in Chicago did the same thing. It was like this tsunami of ideas that Jimmy Smith could conjure up when he was playing. And back in those days, that was 62. You didn't understand as a kid what a solo was supposed to contain. I'm a big fan of musicians playing really interesting things, which is why I now have a 10-piece band with horns and organ and guitar and female and other singers. And it's like, their joy of what they do infuses me with an amazing feeling. So I understood it from Jimmy, not knowing that he would move 7 minutes from my front door 30 years later. That was amazing that happened. But I then the Rolling Stones came out with an odd single for them. It was called Little Red Rooster,
Yeah.
which was a version of Willie Dixon's Red Rooster that Howlin' Wolf recorded. So two things happened. One, the mystical sound of the blues based on gospel music and progressions grabbed me. I always liked songs like Shout by the Isley Brothers and I Need Your Lovin' Every Day by Don Gardner and Dee Dee
Katie
Ford. For some
Ford.
reason, that church thing, whoa, 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 I
Right.
need your loving
Yeah.
every day. That floored me. And you make me want to shout, throw my hands up and shout, throw my head back. Well, that's gospel. So I heard the blues through the Rolling Stones. There was a place on 12th and J called Rick's Record Rack. And I would go downtown and go there. Well, I look at the British albums. He had some imports. They were right next to the blues. So that's where I found Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson, Little Walter, Jimmy Reed. My dad come and knock on the door and say, "What are you listening to in there?" So I fell in love with the entire blues and its language, that it has all its own. The fact that there's a rebellion in the blues about being forced to not be who you feel that you are and being sublimated to a society. And while I was a teenager, that spoke to me. So then I started playing harmonica, which you could get a harmonica for $2 at a music store. And that was it. Because the blues and harmonica go together like mayonnaise and tuna. It just works.
What, what a great analogy. That's great.
Well, I thought I was smart because with a harmonica, you don't have to carry an amp. You just put the damn thing in your pocket and go to a gig. Later, of course, once I learned the Chicago style of Paul Butterfield and James Cotton, you had to have an amp. But it just was magical. It was a world I'd never been exposed to before. You'd hear Louis Armstrong and it would be really cool because he was a great soloist, but there was something going on with the blues. And then, boom, in 1965 and 66, the blues explosion started. Paul Butterfield in Chicago with Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop and Nick Gravenites and that group of students at the college there. And boom, it came to England. And John Mayall, a dear, dear man, was turning out one great soloist after another. Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Mick Taylor. It was just, I tell people it was just my time, and I got deep into it. I mean, it started for me in, was it October of 1964, when the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan, and every teenage boy throughout America said, "Hey, they're buddies. They get to play music and goof around, and the girls like them." What could be a better recipe for the rest of your life?
So, go back to your personal journey. How did you get into your first band or form your first band or whatever?
With great distress. The first band I was ever in, there was a song called California Sun, and they didn't like the way I sang. So, because of my earnestness, they let me sing. Well, they're out there having fun in that warm California sun. And that was it. Then I had to stop, and the other guy sang the rest of the lyrics. But I got kicked out of the first 7 bands I was in. Have you noticed that my bands are Mick Martin and the Blues Rockers? Mick Martin's big blues band. You know why I did that, Dave?
Why?
Because if my name was on it, they couldn't fire me.
Makes perfect sense. But seriously, you
I know it does to me too.
you you became the star at what point?
God, I don't know. Um, I guess when I was working for the Sacramento Union, I got a call from Phil Gavant. Now, as I told you, there's this guy, Jeff Houston, started K-ZAP. He and I
Yeah.
started the Sacramento Blues Society. And and Phil Gavant was putting on this outrageously good festival in William Land Park and then later Old Town Sacramento. And he asked me if I had a band that wanted to play. I said, "This is crazy, Dave." And I said, "Yes." And then I got on the phone and called all the musicians I knew to see who wanted to play blues with me. And Phil, God bless him, he was creating magic every year with all the greats. Not one great musician wasn't there. Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Lonnie Mack, Ray Charles, John Mayall's Blues Breakers. I mean, It was a pantheon of all the greats of the blues, and I was right down there in front, or eating barbecue in the tent with heroes like Junior Wells and Buddy Guy. It was insane. And he thought maybe if he put me on the show, I'd write about it. I would have written about it anyway. I mean, it's just like all these great people coming to Sacramento. I got to let everybody know. One of my proudest moments was putting Muddy Waters on the cover of the entertainment section. Also, Ray Bradbury. I mean, that's another thing I loved when I was a kid. And the managing editor came in one day. I think it was Forrest J. Ackerman, who started a magazine that every teenage boy had to have, called Famous Monsters of Filmland. And I put him on the cover. And this is after Little Richard and some other people. He walked over to my desk and said, "Where do you find all these weirdos?" I mean, I was an outsider. I mean, I was somebody who marched to a different drummer. Of course, Bob, fine newspaper man. The people he liked who played music were before the generation of the Beatles. In fact, when I started writing about music, it was as a reaction to what was in the Union, which was a teen scene. You know, oh, David Cassidy is so hot, girls. And it's like, no, what about what Eric Clapton's playing with Cream and Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker? That's great stuff. So I started writing for the Pony Express at City College and the State Hornet at what I still call Sacramento State. And that ended up with me being the editor of a weekly called Aardvark that was free
Oh,
at
yeah.
all the colleges and on the campuses. And then I graduated, but it didn't seem like a path, Dave. It didn't seem like I'd started a journey. You know, what is that? Oh, John Steinbeck said, you know, through Ma Jode, a woman stays the course in life, but men, they move in a jerk. They move away and get a job, and that's a jerk. And then they marry and have children, and that's a jerk. So I guess I'm just a jerk.
Let me back you up for just a second. You mentioned the aardvark, and I was very close to Gus Kaplanis and Chuck Woodbury. I still stay in touch with Chuck, but I lost I lost touch with Gus a long time ago. Did he pass?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
What a character. What a
Yeah.
character. He was the archetypal, he was the perfect example of a grumpy publisher who didn't want to spend money. We had a gal named
True, but
Debbie
he
Fisher.
but outside of the office, he just always had a smile on his face and a laugh in his heart.
Well, yeah, because he was putting it over on his staff. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Gus was a Gus. If I created a newspaper environment in a fictional, you know, scene, Gus would be all I needed for the quirky publisher. I mean, he was incredibly funny, and I would always shock him with something, and. So once we struck at a free paper. We went out and formed a protest march because he refused to pay Debbie Fisher $10 for her weekly restaurant reviews.
Yeah.
We were
Well,
outraged. How can he do that? You know?
well, it's a good point. I didn't know that. You're talking about great times. I'm getting the impression that, and I'm guessing this is kind of what you might think, and that is that your career, your life, actually, musically, in other words, that all tied in together, is kind of
Yeah.
just kismet. You didn't
Yes.
plan any of it. It just all happened to you, and it's just been a wonderful journey for you.
I'm still on it. One of the things that I've always felt was important was to be a teacher. Now, I taught journalism for a while at AR. I started blues in the schools in Placerville, and then it became a staple of the Sacramento Blues Society. I just, I'm, I'm having the great thrill of inducting a young man. He's 31 now, and he came to the Cal Expo lot when I was performing with Mick Martin and the Blues Rockers at 9 o'clock in the morning after having a gig that we didn't get home until 3 in the morning that same day. So we're
It
up
happens.
there. I mean, there are those little bubbles over our head, like you see over cartoon characters
Yeah.
when they're drunk or woozy. And the guitar player, Jim Papastathis, and the bass player, Steve Schofer, said, "Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Listen, listen." And there was somebody playing harmonica. So I went up to the mic because usually, Dave, when you have somebody playing the harmonica, they are terrible. I mean, that's the one instrument anybody can buy and ruin in a matter of seconds. So I walked up to the mic and I said, could whoever is playing please stand up? Because there are a bunch of folding chairs there for the audience. Nothing. Could whoever is playing the harmonica please stand up? Nothing. Hey, he is standing up. 4'2", 11 years old.
Oh,
And he came up to the stage, and I'm inducting him into the Sacramento Blues Society Hall of Fame on the 29th of September at Harlow's downtown. And it's such a remarkable, I've seen a lot of my kids go on to doing things in the arena they wanted. You can't, you just start them on the path and then hopefully that'll work out. And he's played, I mean, he's playing everywhere, blues festivals all over.
what's his
He's
name?
a great harmonica player. He's also an excellent guitar player. He plays piano, drums, and bass. It's like if he shows up with an oboe, I'm kicking his ass off the stoop.
What's his name?
Kyle Rowland.
Okay. And
But he has, I subterfuge allowed me. Well, one of my heroes in the harmonica was James Cotton, and he played with Muddy Waters, and he's one of the giants of the blues. And I taught Kyle how to play his signature instrumental called the Creeper. And we were at the Horsemen's Association, which is where they continue the Heritage Festival in Sacramento, and Cotton was there. So I told Kyle, I said, look, I want you to back up. I don't want you to turn around. And I won't let you bump into anybody. But when I touch my nose, I want you to stop walking. So he did it. I touched my nose and I told him, when I pull my ear, I want you to start playing the Creeper. Because there were people talking to James Cotton and I wanted it to be a surprise. So, you know, all the hand signals, and Kyle started playing. And James started thrashing around trying to figure out who was playing. And he looked behind him, and there was a kid who was about as tall as James was sitting in the chair, ripping into his signature instrumental and riffs. And so Kyle ended up spending James's 80th birthday with him in Austin, Texas, as one of the special guests. And
Wow.
that is amazing to me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where do you go from here?
That's
What
what,
are you doing these days? Your
well,
band's still working?
oh, yeah, yeah. I have a 10-piece band. Um, one of the guys who played our very first blues festival. Jim Caselli is on drums. Andrew Little, a friend of Kyle's that I've kind of nurtured through the years, and a great guitar player. AJ Joyce, who played with uh, Charlie Musselwhite and a number of notable people. I started with Danny Sandoval, a great sax player, Andrew, and Danny. And we had some of the remnants of the blues rockers. And I said, and AJ and Danny said, you got to get better people. You got to get better people. Now, this is tough because these guys play with everybody. Our arranger and trumpet player, Dave Johnson, is part of Cold Blood. And so I can't book a date. I can say, maybe I can get them and then call everybody and try to figure out how to fit. We're going to be at the Sutter Creek Theater in beautiful Sutter Creek on the 28th of September. Now, on the 29th is where the band that Kyle and I have, called the Dixie Drifters, are playing at the annual Hall of Fame meeting. I've been on the Hall of Fame committee for a long time. I don't know exactly, but I was one of the few OGs. I was playing in the 60s when the blues was going on. Most of us were playing at teen centers, but there was a big blues scene here in Sacramento. So I have slowly, with the cooperation of these wonderful people who keep the society going, gotten all the old guys and women who were playing the blues at the festivals, and part of after the Dixieland Jubilee in Old Town Sacramento morphed into the Sacramento Music Festival. It happened where Dave at the Blues Festival died. Roger Crum from the Sacramento Dixieland Jazz Historical Society called me on the phone and said, what would you think of playing the Dixieland Jubilee? Because, blues is part of that same thing. And the next thing I knew, Roger was saying, hey, that went great. Who else can we get? So I got a lot of people I knew from the Bay Area and Reno, Tahoe, to be part of that performance. It was a really, for me, family event.
Yeah.
These are people we played all the same horrible clubs and had the same horrible experiences, but you bond,
Yeah.
and you try to help each other out, which is a little different from the rock scene.
Well, also at the Dixieland, as it was called at the time, Jazz Jubilee, uh, and I spent many years there working as a volunteer, and
Uh-huh.
I knew Roger Crum very well. Uh, it had to be a much greater, different scene for you because you weren't playing some club late at night down some alley or something like that, or even on a great stage, but you were playing in the broad daylight under a tent, uh, very hot weather sometimes, and entire families were there. So, you really were spreading the the future of the blues there in old Sacramento.
We also played the state fair for at least 35 years,
Yeah.
every year in triple digit heat, because that's when they would have the fair. I I played an outdoor gig last Friday at the Natomas Country Club, and it was 104. And I thought, I used to be able to get through this with a lot more pep.
Yeah.
I felt all pepped out. But that's what playing music is. You're playing music. That's it. You don't really get that much control. The worst gigs for me were casinos, and I learned that if music is not the center of the event, the heart and
Right.
soul of it,
Right.
you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
I had an agent up in Reno when we were at our height. We had the agent in Europe. Well, two of them, one in Italy, one in Oxford, and then this fellow who started out in West Sacramento and also used to be at the Sound Factory all the time. Then he moved up to Minden, Nevada. But he would get us gigs at the casinos, and our eyes, had stars in them. I mean, the thing is, you're not there except to give a moment's respite to the gamblers so they can catch their breath and go back and lose their house.
Yeah.
We used to play from midnight to 5 a.m. And one time, we were at the Peppermill. One time in Reno, I went to the restaurant, and it was the most heartrending scene I've ever witnessed. A man and his wife bawling at this table. And she's saying, "But honey, why did you have to put up the house? What are we going to do?" It was just, I mean, talk about being in interesting places
Yeah.
that teach you.
Yeah.
My mother would always give me a roll of quarters, and I'd bring back the roll of quarters. She'd hit me with a towel and say, "Why didn't you gamble?" I said, "Honey, I gamble with my career. I'm gambling with I've been married for 52 years. My daughter's 39. She's got a wonderful husband. I've got two great, wonderful grandsons, 10 and 12. And I've had a full, complete, with all the trimmings life. Most musicians end up living in a motel in Reno because their wife left them. My wife has been wonderful, although not always extremely patient, with this roller coaster ride. And I wouldn't have gotten my daughter through private school if Carrie Nosler, Captain Carrot, hadn't called me on the phone one day and he said, "Hey, Mick, I'm tired of renting turkeys. Why don't you write a book about what movies to rent? I like your movie reviews on TV and in the newspaper and on the radio." And I did, and it became a bestseller. It was the right time. I think I gave you the video movie
Yeah.
guide, didn't I?
I think so. I got to go back and look. You sent several things. Yeah.
Well, I threw them at you, really, is what it was. It's just, I was really high strung back there, Dave.
Well,
But, it's like write a book, been in a couple of movies, sort of, but radio. Radio, radio, radio. Here I'm talking to one of my heroes for this thing. And radio is what has sustained me because Mick Martin's Blues Party started on K-ZAP, went to Cap Radio, which originally was KXJZ, a jazz station, but then it became news. But I've been the blues uncle of generations of people.
yeah.
And this, when I was on Cap Radio, it went all the way down to Manteca, all the way up to past Reno, over to Quincy, and then Sacramento and Stockton, Modesto. Who gets a job like that? I'm sorry. I wish I could say that I understood it, but I was always there to serve, not to. I fought to keep the show pure in whatever my screwy way of looking at it was, so that I was championing the music of my heroes. When I started at K-ZAP, it was the big blues boom of Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I decided that what I was going to do is forever Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jay Giles Band, Aerosmith, Rolling Stones, Johnny Winter track. I would play Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, Slim Harpo, the real deal. And so I've kind of had an angel on my shoulder in that I was trying to serve Black culture. and make sure people know that when the Rolling Stones do Little Red Rooster, they're doing a song by Willie Dixon. And I was fortunate to know Willie and Muddy Waters and so many of my heroes who are just down to earth, working people. Some of them a little crazy, but I've known that to be true of disc jockeys.
Yeah. Has that blues culture um, surpassed your definition of being a black culture? Has it expanded appropriately over the years?
That's a tough question. It's a good question, but it's a tough question because in the black community, there was always a feeling of being co opted, particularly by the artists who wrote the songs. And then they'd hear Eric Clapton doing them on the radio, knowing full well he was making more money doing them. And they were ripped off by the labels, so nowadays the same thing has happened across the board with streaming. The people who write the songs are not getting the royalties. There was a golden age there for a while, if you call it that, where people like the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac were getting enormous royalties. But for the black artists, I worked with Bo Diddley uh, 3 times. And he was very open and conversational. I backed up Bo Diddley. Anyway, and I asked him, did he get any money? Because he wrote Who Do You Love? He recorded You Can't Judge a Book by the Cover. And of course, Bo Diddley, Hey Bo Diddley. He was a songbook unto himself. And he told me no. So I knew Muddy Waters' manager, Scott Cameron. And I called him on the phone and I said, it's a shame and a sin that Bo hasn't realized any money from what he recorded. He said, I'll look into it. So he called me back and said, Mick, he sold his entire catalog twice, both times for $250.
Oh my. Oh my goodness. Well, apart from the tragic business side of it, has the popularity of blues bloomed over the years?
It waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
There you can see, like when all the white kids started playing the blues, of course, white kids started buying the records. But that only helped the publishing companies and the record label owners. But is it still a part of the culture? Yes. But I'm seeing it start to age out with our audience. And I don't think it will ever die, just as great jazz never
Well,
dies. People will always appreciate Louis Armstrong
yeah.
and Ray Charles and Oscar Peterson. Uh, and I hope Jimmy Smith, because, I mean, he mentored quite a number of harmonica players, oddly enough. And he was so generous to me. He taught me so much. We recorded, and I don't have it, a version of Amazing Grace that was kind of like Walk on the Wild Side, with me playing harmonica and the tambourine like the drummer does in Walk on the Wild Side. But I never, ever thought that I would record with him. I'm on an album called Some Serious Blues, one song, and I did go to Carnegie Hall. It was called The Blues in Jazz. They were fading Jimmy. Before he discovered what the organ could do, nobody played it like that. Wild Bill Davis, Fats Waller, they dabbled, but they didn't really. He discovered every tone, every vibrato, every a little push you could give the keys on the organ that would create another sound because you were going from one note to the other. I mean, I tried to play like Jimmy Smith and brother Jack McDuff and Jimmy McGriff and the sax players who played with Ray Charles because there was a certain kind of rustic sound to the harmonica players. And I'm a jazz guy. I wanted to include melody with the blues feel. When I first heard the harmonica, it was a 78 record given to me by my mother's uncle, Larry Adler, playing chromatic on Rhapsody in Blue. Hearing Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue on a chromatic harmonica blew my world open. It is the most plaintive sound in the world. And there's a great album he did with George Martin, who produced the Beatles, Larry Adler, called The Glory of Gershwin. People like Sting and Pat Benatar. It was an 80th birthday present to him from George Martin, who was really the fifth Beatle. His ideas about how to arrange their material were very important to their supersonic growth. And you listen to that, you can find it on YouTube. Larry Adler, Larry Adler, with George Martin, Rhapsody in Blue. If it doesn't break your heart, I mean, the emotions that Gershwin expressed in that piece had to be done with the blues. And of course, Gershwin introduced the blues to classical music.
Final question, Mick. We've kind of just raced through your life here. We could talk for a long time.
I'm sorry.
No, 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 not at all. It's been fascinating. I just say there were so many places I want to stop and say, yeah, but what about this? What about that? Let me just
Well, we can pick up and do it again sometime.
be happy to do that.
I really do have trouble talking about myself, Dave. I just choke up. Actually, it's embarrassing, but my mother passed away at 91, and she said, "You keep talking about the things you did, Sonny." So, yeah,
Yeah.
I've had a gloriously blessed life. And I believe if you don't revere money and you do it for the love of the art, that good things will happen to you. I mean, I think that people get it out of order. Do it for the love of it, do it for the art form and the people that you meet along your path. And sure, there's going to be times when you're terrified that everything's going to fall apart. But somehow, I always had enough money for the house payment, not the rent, the house payment. And my daughter had clothes to wear. My wife felt secure if she stopped and thought about it. But this has been crazy, Dave. I I want people to know that if you follow your heart, that people aren't going to knock you down and step over you. It's possible to follow the journey of your desire to do things for other people and the art that you love and not find yourself destitute. Unless I'm the luckiest SOB who ever walked the earth. It has to be shareable.
That's a perfect ending. I'm going to blend that into some of your performance that you've sent me. And I will put it all together. I'll send it to you and we'll get it posted up locally and on my podcast, which is somewhat followed nationally. So thank you so much, and we may very well want to follow up because, like I said, I every every other sentence brought me another question, but I just wanted to keep you talking.
Well, Dave, it's been a privilege.
Took a while, didn't it, for us to get?
Well, anything that's worth doing.
Yeah.
what they say. I'm now I'm 75 now, and I think this is kind of my last opportunity to say to people, this is possible. I was obsessed, and there were many, many, many scary moments where I call it the universe, I call it God, but I mean, our equipment burned down at a place called the Shire Road Pub
I know it.
when
I
we had our
remember it well.
first album out. And within 8 months, I was working on the newspaper. Then I was working on TV. And then I was working on the radio, all three of them. And I just, all I ever said in my heart was, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful for all of the things that have happened for me and allowed me to open doors for other people. That's the key. You find somebody who's got talent and you try not to overpower them. And you just kind of give them a little pat on the butt, even though that's not appropriate anymore, and tell them they can call you anytime if they have questions. And I like to see, that's the greatest thrill. Getting what you want doesn't compare at all with seeing somebody fully realized in whatever their art form or their work is. I just called up my cousin. I said, okay, you've been licking your wounds, get off your ass, get that music out to people. You do great work. I know it was rough, but you didn't have to say no to Kenny Loggins when he offered you 20% against his 80 for that song he liked back in the 80s. I said, have you finished licking your wounds yet? Pick yourself up and get back at that keyboard. How old are you now, Dave?
Just turned 73.
I hate young people.
Well, there are probably not too many people in your life you can talk to then.
Well, no. Cultural touchstones included, no. When I tell people I used to know John Carradine, they just look at me,
Right,
but
yeah. I'm sure a lot of the musicians you talk about too, it's like you get a lot of blank looks. I know who you're talking about, and I remember many of the songs that you've quoted even before we started the successful video. So anyway, I'm going to let you go, Mick. Thank you so much. I'll let you know when I got this put together, let you see it. And I want to stay in touch. I really like you. I've liked you for a long time, and now we've had a chance to talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dave.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I don't believe you love me, baby. as I love you. I'm starting to get the message by the things that you do. Well, I do, oh baby, I'm losing you. When I try to kiss you, girl, you move and turn your head away. Can't seem to reach you, darling, no matter what I do or what I say. Well, I do, oh baby, I'm losing you. When I try to hold you close, honey, I can hear you sigh. You don't want me anymore, and how I wish that I knew why. Well, I do, oh baby, baby, I'm losing you. want to believe it, baby, but I suspect you've got someone else. As much as I love you, I just can't go on fooling myself.